everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Switch gears, and I want to go ahead and do a little bit of a follow-up on the big news of the day in college football, and that is that Alabama lost not one, but two superstar players to the transfer portal. And if you've been plugged into this channel all day long, and you better be, if you haven't, shame on you. If you haven't been plugged in, shame on you. You probably saw the news and the immediate reaction that Alabama lost both All-American freshman safety Caleb Downs to the transfer portal, and then just a few hours later also lost five-star offensive tackle Kadyn Proctor, who as a freshman this past year started every single game at right tackle. Both of them 5 stars in the class of 2023. Both of them instant impact stars for an SEC champion, both now leaving Alabama. And so earlier in the day, we did the reaction, and we talked a lot about it from the Bama perspective. What's next for Bama? Can Kalen DeBoer do anything to slow things down? What is going on? Are the rules fair? All that good stuff. But at the same time, it is now time to look ahead, right? Because this news cycle moves fast. And with both players entering the portal, and with virtually every school that they're looking at or plan to look at already starting winter and spring classes, it means that both these players could come off the board soon. And I'm going to take this a step further. I think we kind of, sort of, already know where both players are going, even though they just entered the portal. So let's start with Caleb Downs. Listen, this kid, I mean, I don't think it's hyperbole to say, you take out quarterbacks, Caleb Williams, Quinn Ewers, guys like that, I don't think it's hyperbole to say that Caleb Downs may be the best player to ever enter the transfer portal, like outside the quarterback position. You talk about a guy that as a true freshman led Alabama, Bama, in tackles, 107 tackles. I believe the stat is, as long as they've been keeping stats at Alabama, no true freshman has ever led the team in tackles. 2 interceptions. He had really a third interception in that national semifinal Rose Bowl that was overturned early in the game. But this kid is everywhere. And the thing about the kid that stands out so much, Nick Saban just gushed about this kid, right? It is hard to get Nick Saban to say nice things about anybody, especially young players. But he just spent all offseason, all spring, all summer, all season talking about Caleb Downs' maturity and his professionalism. And so this kid enters the portal, and it is like a feeding frenzy for the ages. But at the same time, while every school in America would like to get their hands on this kid, it feels like there are it's really down to 2, but it might be down to 1, as I think it's going to be either Georgia or possibly Ohio State. I don't think anybody else is really in the mix. From the Georgia perspective, listen, if you listen to a show like this, you know the reason why. Travaris Robinson, I was talking about Travaris Washington. My brain is fried today. Travaris Robinson, T-Rob, was the defensive backs coach at Alabama. When Nick Saban retired, he took a job at Georgia as the co-defensive coordinator. And this kid was both Caleb Downs' lead recruiter to Alabama, and also on top of that, he was his position coach at Alabama. And so the ties have been there for years. This kid is now, or the coach is now at Georgia. It would allow Caleb Downs to go home. And I'll say this, listen, as much as everybody wants to freak out about NIL and the portal and what's fair and what isn't this proof that most recruiting is still about what it's always been about? Like, this kid isn't going to Georgia because Georgia's just dropping a bag, okay? And listen, I know he's going to be compensated very well. But if it was just about dollars and cents, I guarantee there'd be plenty of other schools that'd be lining up to get involved. This is about a kid who committed to Alabama to play for Nick Saban. His 2 lead recruiters were Charles Kelly and Travaris Robinson. Nick Saban has retired. Charles Kelly left last offseason to go to Colorado, and then after that ends up back at Auburn, I believe, over the last couple of weeks. And Travaris Robinson is gone. And so, listen, I know if you're an Alabama fan, you're upset. But at the end of the day, this is why we have the transfer rules the way that we are. Kids shouldn't be beholden to stay and play for a staff that doesn't know them, that they have no relationship with, that might, not in the case of Caleb Downs, but in the case of many others, might not even want him. And so it feels like Georgia is going to be the answer for Caleb Downs. Listen, we'll do a reaction video when it happens. Georgia's going to be so freaking good next year. Especially if Caleb Downs ends up there in that defensive backfield, on that defense, all that young talent, CJ Allen, Smile Munden, all those guys that are returning, Malachi Starks in the defensive backfield. Now you add Caleb freaking Downs. It's unbelievable. I do think Ohio State's in the mix. Listen, he obviously has a relationship with Ohio State. And the only thing I would say is Ohio State's a heck of an option if he does decide to pursue that. They're going to be really good next year. And we talked about it a few days ago on this channel. I've been very critical of Ryan Day through the years, but the truth of the matter is, like, they are really good at pretty much every position next year. To Ryan Day's credit, they've shored some things up through the portal, added Will Howard, add Quinshawn Judkins, but more importantly, they just have so many dudes coming back. Emeka Ibuka, Travion Henderson, Denzel Burke, the defensive back, and then on top of that, also JT Tuimoloau on the defensive line, Jack Sawyer on the defensive line. I could go on and on. And so they have a very talented team. And if you add Caleb Downs, I think that would be the sell, right? Come here. You're the missing piece. You're the last piece to a national championship team. We'll see what happens, but my guess is that Caleb Downs commits to Georgia and that it happens pretty quick. Let's switch gears, talk about Kadyn Proctor. By the way, if I mess up names, forgive me. We're talking about Kalen DeBoer, Caleb Downs, and Kadyn Proctor. I'm going to get him tripped up. But let's talk about Kadyn Proctor. And for people who don't know this kid's story, fascinating deal. He's originally from Iowa. He was the #1 offensive tackle in the class of 2023. He was committed to Iowa for essentially the entire recruiting cycle. Then right before National Signing Day last year, ends up decommitting, flipping to Alabama. And that was like one of Nick Saban's last great recruiting wins. Ends up at Alabama, and to his credit, started every game for an SEC champion this year. Now, he wasn't perfect. He had his moments, especially in pass protection. Listen, true freshman playing in the SEC. Forgive him. He wasn't perfect. But he's a really, really talented player, and now he's decided to move on. Like Caleb Downs, it feels like we know where he's going to go. And it's interesting because you read multiple reports. There was actually talk that he was thinking about leaving even if Nick Saban hadn't retired. And so because of it, all signs point towards him going back to Iowa. And so listen, this is, again, what did I just talk about? Everybody wants to make everything about NIL. They're tampering with our players. They're paying them so much. If this kid ends up at Iowa, I find it hard to believe that they're dropping bigger bags than everybody else that would be wanting to get in the Kadyn Proctor business if they could. And I think what this comes back down to is that the kid probably wants to get a little bit closer to home. And I think we do forget, what did I just say? The kid. And I know they're young adults. And I know that they're getting paid now. And I know that we shouldn't be treating them like kids. But kid's still 18 years old, 19 years old. This was his first time away from home. He almost decided to leave Alabama, even if Nick Saban had stayed. And when Nick Saban left, he said, you know what, maybe it is time for me to start over. I'm not here to tell him what to do. I'm not here to tell him what's right or wrong. I am just here to very simply say, I think we put so much, make everything about NIL. Sometimes a kid just wants a fresh start. Sometimes a kid wants to be closer to his friends and family. His family, mom and dad don't have to get on a plane every time to watch him play. So is it right? Is it wrong? It's his decision. It's not for us to say. But Iowa seems to be, according to multiple reports, trending in that direction. The only thing I would say is if you do want to get closer to home, you do want to be in Big Ten country, Ohio State does desperately need offensive line help. And I don't know if he's going to seriously consider them or not. But Ohio State, I just talked about them having national championship parts everywhere. I think the one place that they do absolutely still need help is along the offensive line. And so if you could somehow end up at Ohio State, or if Ohio State can somehow get in the mix, like, that is a kid that they could desperately use. So we'll see if anybody else emerges. But I feel like Caleb Downs is going to end up at Georgia. I feel like Kadyn Proctor is probably very likely going to end up at Iowa. And it sucks, but this is the new world of college football. And this is one where, and I've been very vocal about a lot of these new rules. I was never in favor of the one-time transfer, by the way. But what I will say is, I also don't think we should make kids beholden to staying in a place they don't want to be with a coaching staff that didn't recruit them, whatever. And so these two move on. We'll see what else happens. Obviously, Alabama, especially in the defensive backfield, has lost quite a few players. Now, look, it's on Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer, you're making whatever, 9 figures now. You're making $10+ million. You got to figure it out. His staff is coming together. We talked about that. But these two are in the portal, and it looks like we know where they're going to go next. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Outdoor Sports Podcast YouTube page. Click the little subscribe button. New videos going up every single day. Appreciate your support. Be back soon.